I am so excited to welcome Michael Cox to the show today. Michael Cox is the CHRO, the Chief Human Resource Officer for Boeing Commercial Airlines, which is a fantastic company doing amazing, innovative things. And what's great about Michael is he has been in every single type of industry you can think of. So whether that's technology, e-commerce, financial services, media, aviation and aerospace, he has done it all. So if anybody is going to bring great secrets to the hiring process on the show, it's definitely going to be Michael Cox. So Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jeremy. And I think you just set me up there for delivery, but I appreciate that. Good to be with you.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Michael, so what I'd love to do, if you don't mind, is I'd love to learn a little bit more about your role, your current role today. And you were previously just CHRO of Boeing's Defense, Space and Security, Global Head of Executive Talent. And then you've done a lot of stuff. You've been at Boeing for almost 5 years now, with a fantastic career. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you're focused on right now in this new role that you've just taken on.
Yeah, thank you. So it's an incredible role, and I've got to say I've had, like you pointed out, just a great career in HR, and I've worked for amazing companies, and I've worked with incredible people like you. But my role with Boeing Commercial Airplanes is probably the pinnacle of that career. When you look at the mission of Boeing, our mission is to connect, protect, inspire, and explore. And we really do that in all the work that we do. And as you know, and I assume all your listeners and viewers know, Boeing has gone through a difficult period of time. We had the 2 crashes of our MAX aircraft and the loss of life there. And I would say Boeing, unlike any company I've been with, truly learned from those crashes and those issues. And our intent, and I know media and things like that would say something different, but at the very heart of Boeing, our mission is to get people from, if it's the defense and space business, to get them from the war front to their families. If it's in our commercial business, it's to connect people and families. And so, the crash of the 2 MAX aircraft was certainly a tragedy, and one that I think the Boeing company has learned from. So what are we doing now? We're recovering from that as we return our MAX aircraft to service. And then also from COVID, right? The impact that had on the industry has been significant. But when you look at the demand for our products, whether it's in the commercial airplanes business or defense or space, if you saw the Artemis rocket launch recently, Boeing is a major developer in the Artemis rocket itself. I was able to see that in the factory several months before it was launched. And just that kind of technology is amazing. So that's the explore part of the future for mankind. What are we focused on? We're focused on the same thing I think a lot of other HR functions, making sure that we've got the right workforce in the right place at the right time. Boeing Commercial Airplanes has over 55,000 employees. The majority of them are located here in Puget Sound, but also in Charleston, South Carolina, and other places. And just doing amazing work, whether it's our 787 program, our 777 program, 737 MAX, and others, and then the work that we do with the government in terms of our commercial airplanes. We're looking to make sure that we've got the workforce that we need, the skills that we need, not only now, but developing those pipelines for the future.
Yeah, that's extremely exciting. And I imagine with those 55,000, 60,000 plus employees, there's a variety of different career opportunities that one could pursue. How has the market been for you post-COVID, with attracting talent and finding the right talent to come into Boeing?
Yeah. It's great being with Boeing because we're an industry that people aspire to be part of, right? People are drawn to air travel. People are drawn to space, those kind of things. So post-COVID, the positive side is our pipeline remains strong. The challenging side is, like every part of our economy right now, inflation is impacting the cost of labor. So we have had to make adjustments there from cost standpoints, whether it's been for certain roles in certain areas, cost of living adjustments, or whether it's been changing our salary tables for specific positions. We've had to make increases there to remain competitive for certain skills. And as we evolve in our industry to being much more of a technology company, we're also now competing for talent with Amazon and with Google and all the technology companies, as well as on the manufacturing side. So it's all around the competition for the talent, making sure that we're paying the right salaries, that we've got those competitive benefits. I will say the amazing thing about Boeing is this is probably the lowest attrition rate of a company. Our attrition is in the mid to high single digits.
Wow,
and as you and I both know from our days in technology, that's phenomenal.
It is phenomenal.
So we're fortunate from that standpoint, but we are an industry that is subject to ebbs and flow of demand based on the economy. But right now we are looking to make sure that we've got the right talent and growing our business as we increase our production rate, certainly in commercial airplanes.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I imagine the low attrition rate, a lot of that could be contributed to what you were talking about earlier around the company's purpose and mission and being part of something much bigger than any of us are to be in this kind of industry and this kind of work. So I imagine, you've got a lot of long tenured folks there, and then people that come into the Boeing, organization have great careers. So that's pretty exciting. And so, Michael, you've also, had a great career in a lot of other places. You spent time at Comcast, at Walmart e-commerce. We worked together at eBay, Bank of America. You've had so many great opportunities. Anything in particular that you'd like to call out from all these experiences that you've had that you think our listeners would be interested to hear about?
Yeah, well, I think if we look at from the candidate side, because I know your audience is both on the HR, the recruiting and candidate side. If we look at the candidate side, I think my career, I've been very fortunate to build a brand and skills that have been in demand. As you and I work together at eBay, the work that I had done in HR in other companies and the work I had done in recruiting at Bank of America was what attracted eBay to recruit me when they did. I think what I would share with your listeners is from the standpoint of, as you look at your career, think about it as a collection of experiences and what you bring the strength to do and how those experiences lend to that will help you be successful in terms of your professional accomplishments. I believe if you're passionate about what you do, it gives you the ability to access energy or passion or whatever you want to call it in order to be able to meet and exceed the expectations of the companies that you work with. So I think if I were a candidate, I would really think carefully about opportunities I would pursue that build on my strengths, that follow my passion, and with companies I can believe in. Like you just said about Boeing, where part of our retention is around our mission. I think, whether it was eBay and the work we did there in terms of creating that global marketplace, or whether it's work I did at, Walmart e-commerce and helping people save money so they could live better, or now at Boeing in terms of our mission. I think if you can find those companies where your strengths match the company's needs and the mission matches your passion, then that's where you can be the most successful. And I think a lot of times people take jobs because of the salary or the title, and I think for me personally, that is not the right motivation. It really is around kind of tapping into that passion, so you have that discretionary effort.
I love that. And kind of when you're saying those things, what it makes me think about is like an artist has accumulated all these great works of art in a portfolio, and all these experiences that they've had and all these things that they've created. It's the same thing. You're creating a portfolio of all these great experiences from all these great companies, all the leaders that you've learned from, all the teammates that you've learned from, and it just continues to build upon that. That makes a lot of sense to me. So one thing I've got to ask you before we get into our three main questions about candidates, hiring managers, and the recruiting team, I'm dying to know who your favorite band or artist is that you'd share with us.
Well, with COVID, we've had a lot of time to be at home and to listen to music and stuff in the background that we normally wouldn't in the workplace. For me, I would say I'm going to give you two because I really go back and forth. Pink.
Okay.
I'm a huge Pink fan. I don't know what you call a Pink fan. I know you call a Taylor Swift fan a Swiftie. I'm a Pink fan. But at the same time, I've got to be true to my roots. And I grew up in Kentucky in the South, as you know. I would also say the Zach Brown band. Those are my two favorite or groups.
Love it. I love it. I always like to get a little personal side of these great leaders and see what are you listening to. So maybe if we start listening to these things, we'll achieve greatness like you have. So thanks for sharing your two bands that you enjoy. All right. Well, Michael, let's shift gears. You've talked a little bit about the candidates. What other secrets would you share with candidates to help them navigate the hiring process and the interview process? What things do you think would be most helpful for folks?
Yeah. I think number one is when candidates decide to pursue a role, they should be strategic and thoughtful. So not applying to, 100 different positions, but really think about the ones that kind of go back to what I said a while ago. Match your passion, match your purpose, and match your skills and strengths. That's number one. And as you identify those companies, really do your research on those companies and the cultures and the opportunities, right? I always find it amazing when I'm interviewing candidates, and I still enjoy doing that even in my position. But when I talk to candidates and they demonstrate through their comments that they really don't know a lot about the company or about the opportunity, and it's easy for, someone to learn about Boeing or eBay or some of the companies that I've been with. But even for companies that aren't so much in the public light, you can still network and get to know people in those companies, whether it's LinkedIn or other ways. So I would say, number one, do your research and know the company, know your strengths and know your passion and how those align. But number two, I would say, remember that the process is not within your control. I see candidates get very disenfranchised or frustrated with the speed in which a hiring process may take. The thing I try to remind candidates is around there are other things going on in the environment other than just recruiting for that one role. And I know we've talked before about the recruiter capacity and what the right rec load is per recruiter and those kind of things. So the recruiter is probably handling other roles. The hiring manager is meeting other demands and expectations. So if a process doesn't move at the speed that you would like it to as a candidate, don't allow that to derail your interest, but learn from it, because I do believe the experience you have as a candidate is probably a good indicator of the experience you'll have as an employee. But don't let it frustrate you because of your expectations, but instead practice the emotional intelligence to understand what's happening on the other side of that interview desk. And I see just a lot of great candidates sometimes get demotivated because they don't think the process is happening in speed they think it should.
Well, and to your point, like every company has a different process, and it would be difficult for candidates to set realistic expectations for every candidate out there in the world of how all these processes will work. So I think that's sage advice. And it's really what can they focus on? If they don't have control over the process, what do they have control over? And how do they mentally prepare themselves to be really successful when they do have those interactions with a recruiter or with a hiring manager or with a panel of different interviewers? I think that's really great advice.
Well, and I would add a piece to that, Jeremy, from a standpoint of, and this is a philosophy, right? So whatever your belief system is, believe that the right thing will happen. And I think that helps also take away the nervousness that can come with interviews, the anxiety that can come with waiting. And it can really kind of help position you in a different way. And I've been fortunate in my career, and I realize the privilege I bring into the workplace for a variety of reasons. But I think I've never felt like the interview I was in was the only job that I ever wanted, or that it was, if I didn't get that job, it was all going to be over.
Yeah.
I've gone into interviews as an opportunity for them to get to know me and for me to get to know them and the company.
Yeah.
And I've taken a casual approach, but that casual approach for my career has led to the career that you recapped a while ago. And I think there's a piece of that that's helped me show up in a different way than I see some candidates showing up, even at the executive levels that I interview sometimes. It helps me show up in a different way than candidates show up sometimes.
Yeah, I like that. I imagine throughout your career, you've had a lot of different interviews, and I imagine you probably diagnose afterwards, the things that you felt like you did really well, and the opportunities that maybe might have been different for the next time, and then apply that to the next opportunity and the next interview that comes around. So yeah, I appreciate that. Okay. Well, let's talk about hiring managers for a minute. You work with, tens of thousands of hiring managers, and you have over your career as well. Hiring managers play a really important part of the hiring process. And I think hiring managers, sometimes they feel like they're really good at being a hiring manager. And sometimes people might be new to it, or maybe they've done it for a while. They think they're great at it, but maybe they're not as great as they think they are. So what advice or what secrets do you have for hiring managers as they're going through the hiring process?
That's a great question. I think the best advice I can give a hiring manager is, remember you're competing for that talent. And just like if you're a B2C company, you're competing for those customers between you and other providers of similar services or products. As a hiring manager, you're also competing for that talent between you and other companies or other employers. So making sure that you treat that person as that valued candidate that they are, so that when you get to the point that you make the offer, not only is it the compensation component that you're offering, but you're also offering the way you made that person feel during the interview process. And I always remind, whether it's candidates, hiring managers, or anyone, it's kind of that saying, I think it's a Maya Angelou quote, that people remember how you made them feel long after they remember what you said or did. I think that's true as hiring managers. And I think that's why sometimes you get into the offer part, or you have candidates withdraw during the process that you really wanted because they were great talent, but they didn't feel that from you as a hiring manager. And therefore they took that offer, or they decided maybe it wasn't the right environment for them. I think whether you're the candidate or the hiring manager, you have to remember that you're in an interaction where the way you make that other person feel is going to drive the decisions they're going to make, whether they're going to stay engaged with you as a candidate, or if you're the hiring manager, whether they're going to make that offer to you as a candidate.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting how feeling and creating like an emotional connection between the hiring manager and a candidate is so important. I think that's how companies can win the war on talent. There's a lot of huge, massive companies out there. Obviously, Boeing's a big company, but you also have your Apples and your Amazons and your Metas, et cetera, that, can potentially throw around a lot of money and a lot of stock and a lot of different things. And companies, I think how you win is that hook of, how do I create that emotional connection with the candidate, something that they care deeply about, something that they care passionately about, and how does that relate back to our mission, like Boeing's mission? That's probably how you guys are able to get such great talent, because it's such a meaningful mission to be a part of.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Great advice. Okay, my last question about the secrets of hiring, and then I do have a couple personal questions I want to ask you. For the recruiting team, coordinators, sourcers, recruiters, the talent acquisition managers, et cetera. You've led so many different teams in this space and have also viewed it from a CHRO position that's different from a talent acquisition leader position, and how important this team is. What secrets do you have for them that will help them be more successful in what they do every day?
Jeremy, I think the recruiters, the sourcers, candidate care all know their craft, right? They all know their processes and those kind of things. I think the place that you can return the most value to the business is knowing the business, number one, right? But also acting as that advisor and influencer and consultant to those hiring managers, and playing that role to help the hiring manager show up, and not only the hiring manager, but the interview teams show up in the best way possible. And then really playing that trusted advisor role kind of on both sides with candidates as well as hiring managers, so that you not only manage a well-executed process, but you manage an informed leadership team, interview team, or candidate pool. I think if you can do that, and part of the challenge, as you and I know from our time together, the number of requisitions on a recruiter's plate is really going to influence your ability to be able to do that effectively.
Absolutely.
So I think that's where it's up to us as recruiting leaders, whether you're a CHRO or a leader of HR or a leader of talent acquisition or recruiting. That's where it's up to us to make sure that our recruiters have the appropriate workload or requisition loads so that they can play that role as advisor and consultant to those hiring managers. In order to be an effective hiring manager or an effective influencer or consultant, though, you've got to know the business, and you've got to be able to speak the language of the business when you're talking to candidates, so that the candidates have trust and faith in you, and the hiring managers, so they also know and have that trust and faith in you that you know their business. It's also one of the ways that you are better at screening that qualified talent for the people that you put forward too, right? Otherwise, you're going on your feeling, which may not always be the best indicator of someone's success in a role.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I remember a time when you and I were working together, and I remember getting a call from you, and we were working on building out this HR shared service center globally, and we were doing a variety of interviews, and you had called me up to give me some feedback about presentation of some candidates that I'd done at a senior level. And you provided me some really great coaching to help me think about it a bit differently. And it was opportunities for me to do something better. And I think, recruiters have an opportunity to listen to their leaders and figure out, what kind of coaching are they trying to provide me? What kind of feedback are they trying to provide me to help me be a better advisor, consultant to hiring managers, et cetera. And you can take it different ways. You can take it, oh my gosh, Michael Cox just called me and, he thought I did a crappy job or whatever that might've been. Or you take it as, gosh, this is really great advice and I'm really grateful for it. And I think recruiters have that opportunity to take advice and coaching and feedback as a gift of something that is going to help them be eminently more successful. And I always think back to scenarios like that and think about, how could I have done this differently? And how can I be a better consultant? And I remember you always talking to us about understanding the business and business acumen, and the better and deeper embedded you are into the business, the more value you're going to provide. So I definitely agree with you. I think there's a big opportunity for recruiters to bulk up their business acumen and then listen to the feedback and coaching from their leaders. Hopefully leaders are providing coaching and feedback, because if you have a leader that just comes and says, hey, you're doing a great job, keep up the good work, that's not very helpful. You want that critical feedback to help you be more successful.
Yeah. Well, I'm quite sure that Michael Cox didn't call and tell you did a crappy job, because I'm quite sure that wasn't the case.
No, never.
But to that point, though, I just finished today calling candidates who had applied for a role that I was recruiting for, that they weren't selected. So we've made the announcement of selecting someone else.
Yeah.
So I called them today to give them some feedback from the interviews. And without fail, they were all shocked that they were getting a call from the hiring manager, and in this case, the CHRO.
Yeah.
But I owe that to those candidates, they invested time to prepare for interviews with me. I interviewed them for an hour and didn't select them. So today I spent 15 to 20 minutes for each person, called them back, gave them feedback on why I thought they did well during the interview and why I thought they should, or, kind of continue to pursue their different career goals, or things I thought they could have done better, just on my knowledge of them and the observations. But I think too often we don't look at, we talk about, oh, feedback is a gift, but when you're getting feedback, you forget that feedback's a gift, right?
100%. 100%.
So, yeah. But I really think as hiring managers or even recruiters, we owe it to candidates. And I know how hard this is because I know the volume of work that we all have, but that should be considered part of our core statement of work, is giving back in return.
Yeah. And I think a lot of companies don't practice that. And the ones that do are going to be the differentiators out in the market that will win talent. Like you doing that, providing that feedback is meaningful. And I, thinking back to our eBay days, you and I would talk about this around, if the candidate doesn't get the job, we still want them to have a really great experience because they may be a customer of the platform. And if they have a bad experience, they might not come back, and we want them to. And that happens at any company. There's always going to be customers that can come back in. So that creating that experience is really important. Okay, Michael, this question I'm dying to know, because I have my version of this for you that I'll share in just a second, but I want to know what you feel like your top superpower has been throughout your career that's just really helped fuel your success.
I think my superpower would be a combination of agility and resiliency.
Okay.
Agility, to your point, I've been in several different industries, several different companies, and then resiliency from a standpoint of being able to face the headwinds that we all face every day in our work, right? Whether it's business conditions, whether it is a downturn in the economy, or whatever those things are. I think the agility and resiliency I've had in my career and my ability to put the bad days behind me, learn from them, put them behind me, and then move on. One of the practices I've always had as an adult is I don't relive a bad day. So if I have a bad day and you ask me how my day was, I'll say it was a tough one, and then I'll move on. I'm not going to give that day power by telling you everything that went wrong that day, because I'm not going to give those things power, like carrying it into the future. So I think that's given me the superpower of resiliency. And I see a lot of people get stuck in those loops of telling the bad story. And I've chosen not to do that from a career standpoint, or hopefully from a personal standpoint too.
I love that. I can totally vouch for that for you as a superpower. As I've been thinking the last few days about this meeting and this opportunity to spend some time with you, you've been such a great influence on my career, the best mentor that I've had throughout my whole career. And I think you're just fantastic in terms of how you create relationships with people and how you create influence with people, and you care about people. And the example that you just shared about giving feedback, that's a great example. And maybe the example that I gave about when you provided me feedback and coaching, because we had such a great relationship of trust, I already knew that it was coming from a good place, and it was helpful for me to be more successful. So you create those personal connections and you mean it. It's not something that's just, you don't have an ulterior motive. You're just a genuine, really great person. And I know that, thousands of people would vouch for that as well. You're also just a strategic mastermind. I remember, and I've used this from when you first came into our team and started talking about our team's purpose and our values and our approach to things and the experience. And you wanted to make sure that we had a clear purpose of why the recruiting team existed and how we were going to operate. And then you'd build metrics around that to make sure that we were, progressing and being effective in what we did. But it always came back to that core purpose. why we exist, and what will help us be successful. So I've used that over and over again. But I think it's strategic because you create kind of a rallying cry around the team to get them excited about something, to get them bought in, and you give everybody a chance to buy into that and to provide their feedback and to provide their opinion on what that looks like, and you build it together as a team instead of somebody coming in and just saying, hey, here's how we're going to do it, and everybody line up, let's make it happen. That's never been your approach. And it was really helpful and has been helpful for me throughout the different teams that I've led up until this point to utilize some of those things. So there's so many amazing attributes that I could share about you, and just want to express my gratitude for all the things that you've done for me and all the people that you've worked with. I do have one other question for you, and it's hanging on your back wall there. It's live a great story. So tell us the context behind that. I'm really curious.
Yeah, so I have had an incredible career. I've worked with amazing people. I've always told you that one day I'll work for you, and I'm still waiting for that opportunity that you'll present an offer. But I challenged myself a couple of years ago with the Live a Great Story saying, to make sure that the story is balanced and it's not just a great career at the detriment of other areas. So one of the reasons I have that hanging next to me in my home office is to remind me that life is about more than your career. So it's about travel, it's about family, it's about friends, it's about experiences. And so it's a way for me to celebrate what I've accomplished from a career standpoint, as well as to remind me that there's a lot more things for me to do and to help others live a great story also. So I have it over my shoulder because that way, whoever I'm talking to the entire time, when they're not looking at me, which I know is probably not much of the time, they're looking over my shoulder, that saying, and it just means a lot to me.
Yeah, I love that. It is so important to, I used to post a lot on LinkedIn every Tuesday around Tuesdays with intentions and living by design rather than default. A lot of times we can get into that mode that we're just flying by on default on autopilot, and we're not intentional about some of the things that we do and some of the relationships that we create and how we treat people and how we help people. And it's a really important reminder to make sure that we know that there's a bigger cause and we've got to have that balance. So I appreciate that. Thanks for sharing.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeremy, for letting me be part of this. I really appreciate it. You know how much I appreciate you. And I think the work that you do, even putting together this podcast, if you help one person find their purpose, find the career or the opportunity that matches that, and you help them live a great story, you're doing something great. So I just appreciate being part of this, and thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks for the time. And Michael, for folks that are looking for great careers at Boeing, where should we point them?
It's easy. It's jobs.boeing.com. So we've got all of our opportunities globally posted out there. I think we have about 156,000 employees at this point.
Wow.
We've got openings around the world, primarily in the US, but certainly a large number internationally. So depending on the reach of your audience, people should go there and look for a career in their area. But it's jobs.boeing.com.
Well, they definitely have an amazing career. So Michael, thank you so much for being on the show. I hope to have you again soon sometime, and I hope you have, a great rest of your weekend.
Sounds good, Jeremy. Thanks, you too.
Hey, thanks for joining the show today. Michael Cox is a fantastic leader. I hope you learned a ton from him. You probably are going to want to go back and rewatch this again and capture all the details that he provided. This information will change your life and change the opportunities that you have in your careers. So make sure you also go check out Boeing's career site. There's so many great opportunities for you to go and build an amazing career. Be intentional with what you want. Find a job that's going to make you happy. Find a job that's going to be fulfilling for you and where you can use your skills, talents, capabilities, and make a difference in the world. So thanks for coming to the show today. We'll see you on the next podcast.